Anyway,
Hi, and welcome back to Jen and Dan's Natural Healing with Plants, the go-to podcast for holistic health seekers looking for the power of nature in healing and wellness. I'm Jen, a dedicated health educator, coach, and master herbalist, and I'm here with my friend Dan, an exercise specialist and master herbalist. Together, we dive into the world of natural healing and bring you a wealth of knowledge and practical advice. We draw from both traditional wisdom and modern science to help you achieve optimal health and vitality. We met at the School of Natural Healing, and so we both believe that healing comes when we bring the body back into balance. So, for today's episode, we are going to be talking about the gut. Hippocrates said that all disease begins in the gut, and there's so many reasons that can be true. And we think about different diseases, how can that be related to the gut? But if you think about things like constipation, maybe it's not just constipation in the intestines that we think about, maybe it's constipation in the veins. Or when we think about things like our gut microbiome, which is such a hot topic these days. Anyway, what have your experiences been, Dan, in working with clients? And do you think that working on healing the gut makes a difference?
absolutely. You know how we learned in the school? I always ask somebody, how many bowel movements a day are you having? And and most people respond pretty favorably to it, and they're not weird because it's that important. So I always, if they're not having bowel movements, we start there. Always start there,
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
for the first month or two while we're
yeah.
cleaning their diet up. We want to
Hmm.
make sure that they're having, or they start to have 1 to 3 bowel movements a day. So that's where we start. And of course, we're going to talk about why we do this. Let's just say this: if you're eating 3 times a day and you're only having maybe one bowel movement a day or every other day, that's a lot of backed up toxicity. And even the medical community will tell you if you're not having enough bowel movements, it starts to go back into your body and it actually get into your bloodstream. So because all this bad bacteria has to go out or it's going to go recirculate into the bloodstream and increase our toxicity. And then toxicity, when we get toxicity, our body cannot function properly. So
Yeah. Yeah, when we eat, there's nerves that are connected from the stomach down to the ileocecal valve, which is down where your appendix area is. And so what happens as your stomach expands, that nerve is triggered to open up the ileocecal valve to move things along. So we should eat and then 30 minutes later go poop. So just like when you feed a baby, 30 minutes later you have to change their diaper. You feed a puppy, 30 minutes later you need to take them out to go to the bathroom. So the same thing should happen to us, but we are trained at an early age to hold it. We are ashamed in school. We don't want to talk about it. Sometimes people just have the fear of using public bathrooms. I worked in a middle school where the kids had to ask me for toilet paper, and that was just really it was humiliating for the kids even. And so we are shamed and told to hold it, and so then we do, and end up injuring our body because when those toxins aren't moved out and they sit in the intestines, like Dan said, it's reabsorbed. Those toxins are against our intestinal lining, and it's only one cell thick there. And so it just damages those cells, and then that can create things like leaky gut, which can lead to all sorts of things, food sensitivities, allergies, asthma, autoimmune diseases, all sorts of things, because it starts out, just a small opening where things get through, but usually it's proteins, and the proteins are what our body attacks. And protein is our carriers. And so that's when our body starts to get confused because we're not supposed to have those proteins on the other side, outside of the intestinal tract. So I talked about like autoimmune diseases. and stuff like that, but it also injures those little finger-like projections that are in the intestine that help move things along, and also injure our muscles as far as peristalsis is concerned. And Dr. Christopher talked a lot about peristalsis, but a lot of autoimmune disease, especially like thyroid disease, like Graves' disease, speeds up peristalsis, but Hashimoto's slows down peristalsis. And the more we hold it and we injure those muscles, peristalsis is the movement through the intestines, it stops moving. And so we have to like reteach those nerve endings to work so that peristalsis begins again. And which is why Dr. Christopher started and used his lower bowel formula. Why he created it was to help nourish the gut lining to help with peristalsis. Do you want to share more about that, Dan?
Yeah, the you're talking about the lower bowel formula, and I've had people ask me, well, will this, if I take this formula, will it actually, because other laxatives actually you become dependent, chemical laxatives you become dependent on. Dr.
Yeah,
Christopher knew this when he developed his formula. His formula actually strengthens the muscles that cause peristalsis. So after about a year, he would say you don't have to have it anymore because it actually uh, makes your bowels work again, basically, instead of paralyzing them.
right.
So, and that's one place to start because there are a lot of things that can affect our gut health other than just food. I
Yeah,
think we talked about that before.
yeah, yeah, we have. Yeah. And so it's repairing, nourishing those cells, repairing the gut lining, which there are lots of different ways we can do that. Eating the right foods, eliminating foods that are creating toxins, and optimizing the diet as well. And so a lot of different things that we have to do to help regrow anything that has been injured in there appropriately. But we also have to, get over holding it and learn to go when we get the sensation and learn to feel the sensation that we need to go. And, most people, when they switch to eating whole food plant-based, they can't believe how much they're going and not how often they're going, excuse me, but
Yeah.
how much more they're going each time they they have to go. And so sometimes that's what it is, is drinking enough water and eating more fiber. Because I think like Dr. Greger, I think it was Dr. Greger I just read yesterday, 3% of Americans eat the recommended fiber that is needed each day. And that's a measly amount. Like that is like the bare minimum that we need to eat. So 3% are just eating the bare minimum amount of fiber. And like when I was growing up, we thought that fiber was the just to bulk up things to make things move out. You need to eat your fiber so you bulk up your poop. But we need fiber for our gut bugs, for the microbiome. There's so many different bacterias and viruses and fungi and even more archaea that live in our intestines, and they feed on those. And we have to have the right balance. And so a lot of times, like when people, like right now, I'm going through a reset in my group. When people give up sugar, they have these headaches and these terrible symptoms because those gut bugs that love sugar are screaming. They're like, we're dying over here. I need more sugar. And they're screaming. That's what's causing the pain and the detox symptoms is because we have a wrong amount of gut bugs that want the sugar. Like Candida loves sugar. Cancer is fed by sugar. And so we want to make sure that we're putting in the right things and not the sugars, but the fibers, the greens, tubers, roots, and things like that. And so making sure you're including those in beans and mushrooms, they're all going to feed all these different bacteria that we want in there to help control. And so a lot of times people want to kill everything off, but the right thing may be to increase the positive ones, the beneficial ones that we want to grow in there. And we have some that are commensals that can be beneficial, but then they can go to the dark side. And so we want to make sure that we're putting in all of the real whole foods, not processed foods, which danger the microbiome. We want to put in the things that are going to help bring everything back into balance. I didn't mean to go out on that tangent. Did you have anything you wanted to add there, Dan?
Yeah, you're talking about gut health, and there's a lot of antibiotic use now. And it's not just going
Yes.
to the doctor and
Yeah.
getting antibiotics, but if you're eating meat,
Right.
These animals are fed antibiotics,
Yeah. Dairy.
yeah, all these things,
Mhm.
and antibiotic resistant strains are actually becoming more commonplace because of the overuse of antibiotics.
Right.
And this kills your gut. I mean, I saw a study, used to tell us that you should take a probiotic after you take a round of antibiotics, but now I've seen studies showing that you may not be able to replenish all these gut bacteria that you lose.
Right.
And I'm not
Right.
against antibiotics. If you have a really life-threatening infection, sure, but
Hmm.
you shouldn't take it for a cold, or they give it to you
Right.
for
Right.
everything, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. My daughter, my nephew, they both have gone to the doctor recently and were immediately put on an antibiotic without even a blood test. And it's like, wait a minute, how do we even know this is what you need? Let's make sure that you need it before you have it. But if you do need it, then yes, it's needed. But an antibiotic is going to kill the bacterias, but then it doesn't kill the resistant bacterias, and then it doesn't kill things like candida. So we're killing it off, and then these other things that aren't killed off are going to start increasing. They have this space to grow, and so we have to be really careful and only use them when we really need to use them. But there's other things too that can injure the gut, like pain medicine. Pain medicine also injures the gut. And so people think it's just antibiotics, but it can be so many other chemicals and drugs as well that are also injuring the intestinal lining.
Well, even the chlorine in water.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we
Yeah.
recommend distilled water.
Right.
And of course, stress. We can talk about stress all day long, but chronic
Yes.
stress will absolutely destroy your gut. I mean, I've been through it. I mean, when I used to
Yeah.
have a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
and food would just run right through me. It's amazing how stress will
Hmm.
affect your gut.
Yeah. And well, I'm the opposite. If I get all stressed, then I get all stopped up.
Yeah,
It's like everything shuts down.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to look at that as well.
Hmm.
And it's
And
amazing how many things have been linked, how many diseases start in the gut, right?
right, right, right. Well, like I said, right. Um, because of the nourishment, we need food. We need all the right vitamins and minerals to go through and be absorbed, to use to help, all of our systems. Like if you have low energy, it could just be that you're not absorbing the vitamins and minerals that you need for your energy cycle. Right? And so it may not even be an intake problem. Maybe you're eating all of the foods, but there's something going on in the gut, so you're not absorbing the nutrients that you need. Or maybe you're not chewing enough. You have to chew like 30 to 50 times for each bite. Try that.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, to break it all down because remember, you don't have teeth beyond your mouth. And so try it. Like the next time you sit down for a meal, see just first chew and see how many bites, how many times you chew before you swallow. Like for me, when I did this not too long ago, it was 5. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so then the next time I went to 30 and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard to get to 30. But then by the time I got to the fourth or fifth bite, it was like I was going up to like 50 and more. I was like, I was, in a rested state, which made it a whole much easier to keep chewing, and I wasn't having to count anymore. It was like, oh, I'm finally slowing down and chewing my food. And so I think chewing the food is so important. And then there was something else I was thinking too, just slowing down, like I just said. When you sit down, like so eating while you're driving your car or eating while you're working at your desk, things that I'm guilty of as well. We're not even thinking about our eating. We're just shoving it in, chewing and swallowing. And we're not going to be breaking down all those foods.
Yeah, if you have digestive problems and you take a lot of Tums or things like that, just try to start chewing because look,
Yeah,
nobody chews 20 to 30 times unless they're trying to. If
right.
you start to do that, your digestion is going to be better because your
Yeah.
body cannot digest big hunks of food. It just can't. You have to make it turn into like a kind of like a liquid. Like Chris would say, chew your food until it turns into a liquid.
Yeah, he did say to do that.
Yeah.
And then something else, I have to look it up to make sure I'm saying what percentage, but your neurotransmitters are also created in your gut as well.
Oh, yeah.
You serotonin and dopamine. And so we don't think about that. But a lot of times when our mental health is low, it's also because of poor gut health or poor nutrient absorption and things like that. But I want to say it was something like 90% of serotonin, I can't find the percentage, is created in the gut. And so we don't even, we think of it as a neurotransmitter from the brain, but it actually happens in there. So we have to have the right nutrients, but we also have the right gut bugs, the right healthy, balanced microbiome to help create that as well. And so we have to make sure we're feeding the gut to even help with those things, the feel good neurotransmitters. And then there's also help with sleep. They help with sleep, they help with your mood, and so much more. And so there's a lot there in the gut. So it's not just constipation, diarrhea, it's also mental health, asthma, allergies, autoimmune diseases, affects so many different things, fatty liver.
Yeah, because it all leads to inflammation. Like if your gut's off, like we talk about inflammation a lot. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you have somebody working on repairing the gut, we have to be careful using the word healing. Remember, medical disclaimer, we are not doctors. We do not prescribe, we do not diagnose, we do not treat. So anything that we're talking about today, we're not telling you to do. We're telling you to do some more research and do your own due diligence to see if they're right for you. But in somebody who needs to work on repairing the gut, what herbs do you find are helpful?
my first herb to think of, I think of is slippery elm because it's
Oh, yeah,
mucilaginous. If you have irritation in the gut or the intestines,
yeah,
this herb helps protect the irritation from stomach acid.
yeah,
So when you take it, that might take a while to work, but you take it every day and it helps protect your gut from further injury so it can actually start to heal. Because think about it, if you hit your finger with a hammer and you keep hitting it over and over, it's never going to heal. The same thing goes for your gut. So that's a really good
yeah.
herb to use. Slippery elm.
Hmm.
I also like marshmallow root. You
Yeah,
can combine the two.
yes. And I like aloe, but I don't want anyone to go overboard with aloe because aloe, if you have too much aloe, then you can start having cramping and irritation as well. And you want to make sure you have a good source of organic, latex-free aloe. But I only use it 1 ounce of aloe juice when I'm using aloe, or a little bit of aloe gel in a tea is helpful. And then I like calendula. Calendula is also a good one. And we want to look for any of those mucilaginous herbs, mucilaginous, the ones that when you chop them up, they have some slime. Plantain. So plantain's another one that is wonderful for healing the gut lining. Doesn't taste so great, but if you combine it with some of these other mucilaginous herbs, then they can be helpful as well. And I even find, I'll have to look at the studies on fenugreek, but I even find fenugreek is mucilaginous as well. And so I suspect that it would be also helpful for healing the lining and also feeding the good gut bugs.
Also, like it's not necessarily herb, but okra. Okra is another
Oh,
food
yeah.
that helps because it's mucilaginous as well. And,
Yes.
and then things like if you're inflamed, you may have to cook your vegetables. And we like to have a lot of raw food, but if you're inflamed, you may have to cook your vegetables for a time before you start to get, the stomach starts to get better.
Right. Right. Yeah, raw food can be too irritating. And so steaming your vegetables before you eat them. Making your own like applesauce and things like that are also helpful. Making a slippery elm gruel, where you just add some water and maybe a little molasses to slippery elm to make almost like a oatmeal, which oats are also mucilaginous and they are really great at feeding your gut microbe.
And another thing, it's not an herb, but cabbage juice. I had a client that had severe
Yes.
problems with her gut. Cabbage
Yes.
juice was able to, and within 5 days, she felt better, and she'd been sick for a lot of years with she had IBS.
Hmm.
Cabbage juice, also carrot juice works the same as cabbage juice if you can't get cabbage. And cabbage juice doesn't taste great, but it works the best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would do cabbage juice. Yeah. Yeah. So, what kind of tools do you think are also helpful?
uh let's
Just
see.
slowing down their eating, being mindful.
Oh God, yes. I mean, they say that
Mhm.
you shouldn't eat if you're stressed out because you won't digest anything.
Right, right. Eliminating inflammatory foods.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
bacon.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah. Oils, cooked oils, right? Anything cooked in an oil. Oil is inflammatory if it is heated. And so don't cook in oils. Don't eat foods that have been cooked in oils. Read your food labels because if you buy a box of crackers that has oils as one of the first few ingredients, then it was baked in oil. And so it's inflammatory, which some crackers are. I mean, you could have the best organic gluten-free crackers, but if they are baked in oil or fried in oil, then that's a very inflammatory food.
I would avoid anything processed. I mean, just for overall health, especially if I'm having gut problems.
Yes,
Processed foods, it's processed. It's not really a food. Let's just say that. So,
right, right. And those are all
inflaming.
going to be irritating. Yeah, and so other healing foods we talked about, like okra and cabbage juice. We haven't talked about cayenne. Cayenne, people think, oh, but that would burn. Cayenne is very healing, and it also stops bleeding. And so I would think that that would be a really good one, actually.
It is.
Yeah. Fermented foods, if you can tolerate them. So some people have trouble with fermented foods, but if you can, if you have trouble with it, then start with just like a half a teaspoon of sauerkraut juice, or something like that, just so you start slowly increasing your ferments, or a little bit of homemade yogurt. But any fermented foods like kimchi and yogurt and kefir, I make a water kefir or ginger kefir. Those are wonderful for the gut. Making a potassium broth, which Dr. Christopher and Dr. Schultz both had potassium broths. Those are very healing. And then lots of fiber prepared the way that is appropriate for you, so that if you have a lot of gut irritation or you have diarrhea, then you want to have those steamed. If you're constipated, then you want to have it closer to raw as much as possible. Yeah. So do you think that anything about the gut surprises people, or you think that most people are familiar with all of this?
Oh no. Most people have no clue how important their gut is. I mean, gut health is linked to heart health, mental health, even your joints, like, rheumatoid, all these rheumatoid arthritis, all these autoimmune diseases can be linked back to the gut. Even the way you sleep, like you were talking about earlier. I mean, it's really I think I tell people this is the command center of your overall health. It's in your gut. It's the control center.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and we want to be in charge of what's going on there in the gut as well.
So most people they think they take Tums when they get heartburn, it's going to make everything okay. But that's just a band-aid on your problem. A
Yeah, it
lot of
is.
times, yeah, there's eating way too much fatty foods like red meat, processed foods like we talked about earlier, and they're probably eating in a hurry. I mean, a lot of us we're so busy. If
Yeah,
I mean, we have to eat on the run, which is, I mean, what do you do,
right. Right. And so it's trying to be as mindful as you can while you're eating it and
Yeah.
choosing foods that are as close to your goals as possible.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. Well, if anything that we shared today resonated with you, please comment below. We want to hear your ideas too for helping with gut health, and we want to answer your questions and make sure that we're giving you content that you like and love. You can connect with us. I work with clients one-on-one and in groups at holisticgen.com, and Dan does as well at danthenaturalman.com. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out to us and subscribe. And until next time, enjoy your plants.